On a bright Saturday morning, the neighborhood park hummed with laughter, the squeak of swings, and the soft crunch of sand under small feet. But on the far side, under the shade of an old oak, 7-year-old Lily Harper sat frozen on a swing, her hands gripping the chains, eyes distant. It had been 3 long years since the accident, a silence so deep her mother Claire Harper, a high-powered tech CEO, had begun to wonder if she would ever hear her daughter's voice again. Claire sat on a nearby bench, phone in hand, pretending to scroll just to avoid the sympathetic stares from other parents. Then she heard it, a warm, deep laugh that seemed to spill sunlight across the grass. She looked up to see a man pushing a boy about Lily's age on the tire swing. He was tall, in his mid-30s, with weathered jeans and a faded gray hoodie. His name was Daniel Brooks, a single father who carried a quiet strength in his presence. When the swing slowed, Daniel approached, crouching down to Lily's eye level. He didn't push, didn't overwhelm, just held out an open palm, and said softly, "Mind if we say hello?" Claire's instinct was to step in, to shield her daughter, but something in his patience made her pause. Lily hesitated, then placed her small hand in his. Daniel's smile was gentle, almost knowing. A few words about the bravest kids passed between them, and then, as if a lock had finally turned, Lily's lips parted. She whispered her name. For Claire, it was more than sound, it was the first note of hope returning. Daniel Brooks didn't rush the moment. He stayed at Lily Harper's eye level, his knees sinking slightly into the sand, his posture open but unthreatening. His son, Caleb, stood just behind him, a little shy but curious, watching the quiet exchange. The air between them was thick, with the kind of silence that could feel like pressure in the wrong hands. But Daniel carried it, like a gentle pause, giving Lily the time she didn't even know she needed. "Hi there," he said softly, the corners of his eyes creasing with warmth rather than expectation. "My name's Daniel. This is my boy, Caleb." He didn't demand a response. Instead, he let the words settle, his gaze steady but kind. Lily kept her eyes on his open hand, her small fingers twitching against the cold metal chains of the swing. 3 years of silence had built invisible walls around her, walls that well-meaning therapists and determined specialists had tried to climb over, push through, or dismantle outright. But Daniel didn't seem interested in breaking anything. He simply waited. Claire Harper, sitting a few feet away on the bench, felt her own pulse quicken. She was ready to step in to shield her daughter from the awkwardness of another failed interaction, but something about Daniel's stillness held her back. He wasn't talking at Lily, he was talking with the space between them, as if the quiet itself was part of the conversation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lily's fingers loosened on the swing's chain. She reached out, placing her small hand into Daniel's. His grip was light, a promise rather than a Dan capture. "You know," he said in a voice just above a whisper, "Caleb over there thinks the biggest slide in the park is only for the bravest kids. But I've met some kids even braver than that." Lily's eyes flickered toward Caleb, who grinned and gave a little wave. Daniel's tone stayed calm, almost conspiratorial, as if he were sharing a secret that didn't need to be spoken to loudly. He tapped lightly under his own chin, then let the motion fall away, giving her room to respond or not. Claire leaned forward, holding her breath. And then it happened. Lily's lips parted, the sound faint but unmistakable. "Lily," she murmured. It was a single word, fragile as glass yet powerful enough to shatter the silence of 3 years. Claire's eyes blurred instantly. She didn't dare speak, afraid even the sound of her voice might scare the moment away. Daniel didn't overreact. He didn't cheer or call attention to it. His smile deepened, but his voice remained steady. "Lily," he repeated softly, "that's a beautiful name. Want to know a secret about this park?" Lily gave the smallest nod. "The best slide here isn't the big one," Daniel said. "It's the little one behind the sandbox. The sun warms it up so you go faster. Caleb and I were heading that way. Want to come with us?" Lily glanced back at her mother. Claire swallowed hard and managed a nod. "Go ahead, sweetheart," she said, her voice trembling but steady enough to encourage. Daniel didn't take Lily's hand. He simply stood and walked beside her, matching her slow, deliberate pace. Caleb ran a few steps ahead, stopping just before the slide to point at it with exaggerated excitement. Lily followed, each step a small act of courage. When they reached the slide, Caleb went first, showing her how the sun-warmed plastic seemed to make you glide a little faster. Then he stepped aside, letting her have her turn. Lily climbed the short ladder, sat down at the top, and hesitated for only a second before sliding. Her feet hit the sand with a soft thud, and for the first time in years, there was the faintest curve at the corner of her lips. Claire stayed seated on the bench, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, watching her daughter's cheeks flush pink and her posture loosen. She could hear laughter, Lily's laughter mingling with Caleb's. It stitched something back together inside her that had been fraying for far too long. They returned to the swings after a few minutes. Caleb talking about how the little slide was secretly the fastest in the park, and Lily listening intently. She climbed back into her swing, this time not to hide, but as if reclaiming a familiar space she had once abandoned. Daniel leaned slightly toward Claire, speaking in a low voice. "She's got a lot she wants to say," he said. "She just needs someone to ask the right way." Claire's throat tightened. "How did you do that?" she asked, barely above a whisper. He shrugged, his gaze never leaving Lily. "Sometimes kindness is the only language that works." It wasn't just what he had done, it was what he hadn't done. He hadn't rushed her. He hadn't filled the air with instructions or praise. He had made space, and in that space, Lily had found her own way out. The moment felt like the opening of a door Claire had been pounding on for years, only to realize the lock was never on her side. It was in Lily's trust, waiting for the right person to turn the key. And today, that person had been Daniel Brooks. As the afternoon light softened, Caleb suggested they race to the sandbox. Lily didn't speak, but she slid off the swing and followed, her movements quicker now, more certain. Claire watched them run together, two children, side by side, and felt the first real flicker of hope in years settle warm in her chest. The connection had been made. Not forced, not engineered, but grown in the gentle soil of TTA, patience and respect. Claire knew this wasn't a magical cure. There would be days when Lily might retreat again, moments when silence might return. But now they had proof that her daughter could speak, could laugh, could join in. And it all began with one man lowering himself to her level, offering an open hand, and waiting. The little cafe on Maple Street smelled faintly of cinnamon and fresh bread, its warm light spilling onto the sidewalk as Claire Harper held the door open for her daughter and their new companions. Lily slid into the booth across from Caleb Brooks, the two children exchanging shy smiles as though they'd been friends for far longer than an afternoon. Claire ordered hot tea, Lily asked for a small cocoa, and Caleb quietly requested apple juice. Across the table, Daniel Brooks simply said, "Black coffee," his voice steady but low. As he placed his hands on the table, Claire noticed the calluses and faint scars along his knuckles. When he shifted, his sleeve rode up just enough for her to see the edge of a faded hospital wristband before he tugged it back down. She hesitated, curiosity pulling at her. "Were you recently in the hospital?" Her tone wasn't probing, it was an invitation, a space for him to share if he chose. Daniel was silent for a moment, his gaze flicking toward the kids, who were now sharing a lurid slice of apple pie. Finally, he nodded. "Yeah. About a month ago. I just got out of VA rehab." Claire tilted her head. "VA, you served?" "2 tours in Afghanistan," he said. His eyes stayed on his coffee, fingers tracing the rim of the mug. "I was a combat medic. Last deployment, our vehicle hit an IED. My legs took most of it. My best friend." He paused, his jaw tightening. "Didn't make it back." "I'm sorry," Claire said softly. It wasn't pity, just acknowledgement of loss. Daniel nodded once, as if accepting the sentiment but not dwelling on it. Since then, loud noises. They hit me harder than they should. Crowds, sirens, even a television turned up too loud. So, I moved to the edge of town with Caleb. Quieter there. Claire listened, her hands folded loosely on the table. "I started spending mornings at the park," Daniel continued. "Not because I can save anybody anymore, but because kids. They reflect back what I need myself. Safety. They know if you're a place they can land." There was a depth in his tone that made Claire realize Lily's breakthrough that morning hadn't been an accident. "That's what you did with her," Claire said. "You didn't force her to talk. You gave her a place where it felt safe to." Daniel gave a faint smile. "My little sister stopped speaking when our dad left. Everyone thought she was broken. But she wasn't. She just didn't trust the people asking questions. I didn't pull words out of her. I just sat nearby until she wanted to answer." Claire leaned in slightly. "You make it sound simple," but I've taken Lily everywhere. Doctors, therapists, specialists. I've bought every assistive device my company produces, but technology can't manufacture psychological safety. She exhaled, the truth settling heavily. This morning, you did. Daniel shrugged, his gaze still calm. Sometimes, kindness is the only language that works. Claire sat back, her mind already moving beyond gratitude into possibility. You did 4 things just now, whether you realized it or not. You saw her first, noticed her body language. You asked an open question, one she could refuse. You followed her pace instead of leading. And when she spoke, you empowered her by not turning it into a stage performance. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You've been studying me? I run a medtech company that focuses on communication tools, she said with a small smile. Observation comes with the territory. But what you just did isn't in any manual I've ever read. It's exactly what our devices should support, but can't, unless we teach them from people like you. His brow furrowed slightly. You mean, like a training program? Exactly, she said. Safe. See. Ask, follow. Empower. That's your framework, whether you've named it or not. Daniel shook his head, a low chuckle escaping. I've never called it anything, I just do what works. And what works, Claire replied, is what we need to design for. Imagine an app that not only prompts caregivers to wait, but also tracks readiness signs before encouraging speech. Shoulders lowered. Steadier breathing. Eye contact initiated. All based on your principles. Daniel's eyes dropped back to his coffee. You don't owe me anything for this morning, he said quietly. I'm just a dad trying to do right by my kid, and maybe help a few others along the way. Claire's voice softened. Maybe it's both. You help kids by being a safe place. They help you by giving you purpose. The kids had finished their pie by then, Caleb sliding the bigger piece toward Lily without a word. Lily laughed light and unguarded, and Claire felt herself smiling without thinking. She took a sip of her tea, then looked back at Daniel. I'm not talking about charity work. I'm talking about hiring you real pay, real scope. You'd train my team on psychological safety and trauma-sensitive communication. We'd let technology learn from people, not the other way around. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I don't want to be a poster, he said finally. I've had people parade me around for being a black veteran before. I'm not doing that again. Claire met his gaze directly. I'm not looking for a symbol. I'm looking for someone who can do the work and who has the authority to refuse anything that goes against their philosophy. I'll put my own name on the program if I have to. Something in Daniel's expression shifted, less guarded, more calculating. If I agree, I want to start slow. Practice first, then write it down. And when I get my first paycheck, coffee's on me. Claire laughed, the tension breaking just enough. Deal. She extended her hand across the blank table. Daniel didn't take it immediately. He looked toward Lily, now leaning close to Caleb as they whispered about the fastest slide in the park. Only then did he clasp Claire's hand firm. Steady, not showy. In that handshake, Claire felt not just agreement, but the outline of something bigger, a framework that could reshape how her company thought about human connection. SAFE wasn't just an acronym, it was a bridge between people, the kind that could change more lives than just her daughters. As they left the cafe, the late afternoon sun caught the gold in Lily's hair. She looked up at Daniel and asked, "Can Caleb come to the park tomorrow?" Daniel smiled, glancing at his son. "If the slide champion approves." Caleb grinned and nodded. Claire watched them walk ahead together, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She knew this was only the beginning of Lily's healing, of Daniel's new chapter, and of a partnership built not on products, but on the quiet, deliberate work of making someone feel safe enough to speak. 2 mornings later, Claire Harper brought Daniel Brooks into her company headquarters. Not through the gleaming glass conference rooms where executives competed in volume, but to a quieter lab on the 3rd floor. The space had sound-dampened walls, warm lighting, and fabric-covered chairs. She wanted his first impression to match the kind of environment he built for children, safe, calm, and free from unnecessary jolts. Inside, a small team waited. Ethan Cole, systems engineer; Grace Morgan, product manager; Dr. Laura Patel, speech therapist; and a handful of younger engineers. Claire introduced Daniel as their psychological safety consultant, deliberately skipping any reference to his veteran status or personal story. Ethan spoke first. We want to understand your framework. Something we can repeat, measure, and teach. Daniel picked up a marker and wrote 4 large letters on the whiteboard. Safe. S is for C, he began. When you walk into a room, don't rush into questions. Observe. First shoulders tense. Hands clenched? Eyes darting? Who is the child standing near? These tell you whether they're ready to interact. He wrote an A. Ask open questions that leave room for no. Would you like to? Is different from do this. Respecting a child's right to decline is key. F is follow, he continued. Walk alongside. Let them set the pace, choose the direction, decide when to switch activities. Finally, E empower. Recognize the small wins. Don't turn them into performances for an audience. Let them own their victories. Grace scribbled notes. Can we codify readiness signals? Daniel nodded and wrote under C. Shoulders lowered, long exhale, gaze steadier, less darting, hands unclenched, leaning forward half a step. If you don't see at least 2, don't move to verbal prompts. Doctor. Patel leaned forward. And when there's a sudden trigger? Daniel drew a quick diagram, dropped to their eye level, model a 4-2-6 breath, inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Give them a focal point, look at my hands, or count the 60s. Blue objects in the room. Once their rhythm returns, suggest a simple shift in activity. Ethan frowned. This all sounds instinctive. Where are the metrics? Daniel smiled faintly. You measure what helps you protect. Time from trigger to relaxation. Number of times the child initiates interaction. How often you delay intervention instead of forcing it. But the goal isn't pushing kids to speak more, it's knowing when to ease off. Claire stepped in. We can add heart rate sensors and wrist accelerometers. Not to pressure speech, but to reduce stimuli, adjust lighting, lower volume. The team murmured approval. That afternoon, they tested with Nora, a trial participant. She clung to her mother, eyes fixed. On the floor, Daniel crouched low, hands open. I'm Daniel. Would you like to sit near Caleb? Caleb had been invited as a peer model. Nora didn't answer but stepped slightly toward him. Daniel waited, slowing his own breathing. When a printer clacked loudly, she startled. He raised his hands into her line of sight. Look at my hands, he said softly, modeling the 4-2-6 breath. Caleb exaggerated the motion so she could follow. Nora's shoulders loosened. Good job, Daniel murmured. Want to see the warm slide in the next room? Her eyes flicked to Caleb. He nodded, and she took a step forward. The session flowed. Exactly as Daniel described. See, ask, follow, empower. Ethan whispered to Grace, I get it now. This can be written into process. 2 days later, during another session with a child named Mia, a mistake happened. Mia hated the smell of sanitizer, but a staffer sprayed some near her seat. Danielle dropped low, ready to guide her breathing, but forgot to remove the stimulus first. The scent lingered, and Mia bolted to the corner crying. Daniel's hand stilled mid-air. I got the order wrong, he said quietly. First, change the environment. He signaled to open the door and turned on a fan, walking Mia into the Kratos hallway. Minutes later, Caleb entered, blowing soap bubbles where the breeze carried the Grasstont smell away. On the third bubble, Mia stepped forward, giggling. In the debrief, Daniel added a new letter before safe, R, remove or reduce stimuli. If the space isn't safe, nothing else works. From now on, the order is R safe. Claire nodded. And we'll build a stop button in the app, so staff can pause all prompts until the environment is ready. Daniel added another layer, something he called safe crying. Sometimes the body needs to cry before it can steady. For kids and adults, you anchor yourself, plant feet, place hands. Fix your gaze, name the feeling, normalize it, then choose a small next step. That way you don't pass your fear or panic to the child. Claire recognized the brilliance of it. We'll make it a module. Self-anchor for staff, so children see adults modeling control. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel trained the team on RSafe plus safe crying. They practiced waiting silently for 30 seconds, most found it uncomfortable by the 15-second mark. If you can't tolerate the pause, you'll rush a child before they're ready, he reminded them. He walked them through scenarios. A balloon popping. A sudden loudspeaker announcement. A child freezing mid-activity. In every case, they followed the same steps. Remove, reduce, see, ask, follow, empower. Data from early trials showed measurable change. Average recovery time from a trigger dropped by 30%, participation after a pause rose significantly. But the most telling metric was qualitative parents reporting their children seemed less afraid to try again even after setback. By the third week, RSAFE wasn't just on a whiteboard. It was on laminated checklists in every trial room. The app prototype included prompts for each step, readiness indicators, and the new stop button. And Daniel's role shifted from the man who helped one little girl speak to the architect of a framework that could help thousands of children and adults find safety in their own time. The following month, Claire Harper sat at the far end of the long glass-walled boardroom, an afternoon sun striping the table in gold. Across from her sat Victor Hale, the CFO, Sabrina Whitfield, the board chair, and Diane Cruz from communications. At the other end, Daniel Brooks remained quiet, hands clasped in front of him, posture steady. The pilot data was up on the screen. Two simple charts told the story. The recovery time curve, sloping down. The active participation curve sloping up. Ethan Cole, their systems engineer, had just finished explaining the numbers. Average recovery time from a trigger had dropped 28% in 3 sites. Participation rates after a pause had risen 25%. Victor tapped his pen against his notebook. "This is promising," he said slowly. "But where's the commercial hook? What's going to make customers pay for this? We can't just sell feelings." Claire leaned forward, calm but firm. "We're not selling feelings. We're selling the ability to participate, the prerequisite for any language or therapy intervention. Without that, every device we ship is just a microphone for silence." The line landed. Even Victor stopped tapping his pen. Diane from communications shifted in her seat. "The market wants a story, Claire. And you have one battlefield to playground, a black combat medic helping children find their voices." PR would explode. "We put Daniel's photo on the campaign, bold headline, and number." Claire's voice cut in before she could finish. It wasn't raised, but it was decisive enough to halt the air in the room. "We are not turning a human being into a brand mascot. The value is in the method, not the man. We will not use his face to bait attention." Daniel didn't flinch, he'd expected the suggestion. But a flicker of relief crossed his expression at the refusal. Claire continued. "Effective immediately, we adopt an inclusion charter. It will be company policy. No individual's image or personal story will be used for emotional appeal unless directly tied to method value, and with full consent. If we need imagery, we use symbols. Anyone can apply. A hand held open, a shaded corner, a warm water bottle, the stop button on the app." Diane's brows rose. "You're passing up a marketing opportunity." "I'm avoiding a trap," Claire said simply. Sabrina, the board chair, studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Put it in the meetings record. It's the right precedent." Victor shifted again. "Fine. But we still need measurable milestones. After 12 weeks, I want to see retention up 20% and support costs down 20%. If it doesn't happen, we rethink rollout." Claire didn't hesitate. "Agreed. If we hit those targets, we scale. And the story will be about the framework, RSAFE, and how it changes participation rates, not about individual heroics." When the meeting adjourned, Daniel lingered near the window, watching the city stretch under the fading light. Claire joined him. "You just fought a battle. I didn't have the energy to fight again," he said quietly. "You're not a symbol, Daniel. You're a colleague. And colleagues don't get paraded, they get credit for the work," she replied. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I'm all in." 2 weeks later, the company auditorium filled with nearly 200 employees for an all-hands workshop. Daniel stepped on stage in his usual plain hoodie, no introduction video, no dramatic music. He started with a silent countdown timer projected behind him, 30 seconds of nothing. At 10 seconds, people shifted. At 20, someone coughed. At 30, the soft chime broke. The stillness. "That," Daniel said, "is the waiting rhythm. If we can't handle 30 seconds of quiet in here, imagine how 3 seconds of silence feels to a child when we rush to fill it." He walked them through RSAFE. Remove, reduce, see, ask, follow, empower using live Demonstrations. He modeled safe crying with his own anchoring technique. Plant feet. Place. Hands. Fix your eyes. Name the feeling. Normalize it. Choose a next step. He explained how staff could use it themselves so children saw emotional regulation in action. When a volunteer, Jordan Lee, a back-end engineer, admitted that slamming doors from his childhood made him tense, Daniel didn't move closer. "Do you want me near or without distance?" Jordan asked for distance. Daniel stepped back, and together they worked through the soothe name normalize next sequence in front of the room. By the end of the exercise, Jordan's voice cracked as he admitted, "I used to yell at my little brother to talk. I want to learn our safe so I never yell into the void again." The room didn't erupt in applause, it offered a warm, sustained hum of support. And that was exactly the culture Daniel and Claire wanted to grow. Later that week, laminated copies of the Inclusion Charter appeared in every department. The first line read, "Our value lies in the method, not in making people symbols." The metrics dashboard tracked only method-related outcomes. Asterisk. Average recovery time from triggers. Asterisk. Participation rates after pauses. Asterisk. Breakthrough moments per session. Asterisk. Professional judgment in delaying intervention. No one's name or face was tied to the numbers. Within a month, the data spoke loudly enough for Victor to stop asking about emotional hooks. Participation was up 22%. Recovery time down 26%. Parent session retention at 29%. Claire printed the updated chart and left it on Daniel's desk without a note. She didn't need to say it, the numbers were proof that respecting dignity hadn't slowed them down. It had propelled them forward. That Friday, Daniel walked into her office holding the chart. "Looks like your trap avoidance plan worked." Claire smiled. "It's not about avoiding traps. It's about building a culture where no one has to fear becoming the trap." They shook hands again, firm, steady, and without fanfare. This time, the handshake didn't just seal a business agreement. It affirmed a shared principle, that respect was not negotiable, and the method mattered more than the myth. The park looked different that Saturday morning. Under the wide branches of two old maples, a fabric banner fluttered gently in the breeze. "Safe Corner, RSA for families." There was no stage, no microphone, no blaring announcements. Instead, several white canopy tents were set up near the tree line, creating pools of shade. On the grass sat a small warm water table, a box of smooth river stones, and a child-sized slide positioned so that the morning sun warmed it just enough to make the ride smoother. Claire Harper walked beside her daughter Lily, who clutched a small paper in her hand. Daniel Brooks and his son Caleb had arrived early, checking the layout with quiet precision. Each tent had the R-Safe steps laminated on a card, a warm bottle of water, and space for parents to sit at eye level with their children. Volunteers moved calmly between stations, their pace deliberately unhurried. Parents arrived in small clusters, some curious, some hesitant. Instead of lectures, they were invited to try the pre-intervention checklist. Remove or reduce stimuli. See, ask, follow. Empower. Claire overheard Daniel gently explaining to one father, "Step into the shade first. Offer warm water within reach, not in their hand. Let them decide to take it. Then move to asking open questions." Lily and Caleb were peer helpers for the day. Their job was simple: demonstrate safe play with other children, showing that things like waiting turns, moving slowly toward a new activity, and choosing how to participate could be part of the game. Claire kept her distance at first, letting Lily choose her pace. She watched her daughter guide a younger boy to the warm slide, explaining in a clear voice how to sit and hold the sides. It was the kind of public interaction that had once been unthinkable for Lily. But here, there was no pressure, only invitation. When it came time for the important sentence exercise, each child wrote one short thing they wanted to say. They could choose to read it inside a quiet tent with no audience, just a volunteer at eye level. Lily looked at her mother and asked, "Close or outside?" "Close," Claire answered softly. Inside the tent, the volunteers' palms rested open on their knees. Lily took a breath, glanced at her paper, and read in a clear, delicate voice, "I like the warm slide." No applause. No spotlight, just a nod and a smile. Lily grinned, and that was enough. Nearby, a father emerged from another tent wiping his eyes. His daughter had just whispered, "I'm scared of the hospital smell." A volunteer guided him through the safe crying process. Anchor yourself, name the feeling, normalize it, choose a next step. Late in the morning, a birthday party arrived at the far end of the park, bringing balloons and a Bluetooth speaker. The bass line thudded through the grass. Claire saw Lily's shoulders tense. Before she could speak, Daniel brushed her elbow, remove first. He crouched to Lily's level. It's loud here. Want to head to the calm spot? Lily nodded. Caleb led the way to a shady tree. There, Daniel offered warm water, observed Lily's breathing, then asked softly, 2 things you see? Leaves and sand, she answered. 2 sounds. Wind and far away laughing. 1 long breath. She exhaled, longer this time, her jaw easing. Out on the grass, the party. Music turned down slightly, after Daniel had quietly asked one of the parents if they could lower the volume for 10 minutes. When Lily's breathing steadied, Daniel moved to follow. What do you want to do next? Slide, she said, pointing toward the familiar sun-warmed one. They took a curved path to avoid the noise. At the top, a little boy ran past, brushing Lily's leg. She froze, then, without tears, dropped into a seated squat and slid down on her back, arms protecting her head. She hit the sand with a soft puff, no injury, no panic. Daniel stayed 1 step back. You chose how to fall. That's excellent. Want to try again or rest? Lily brushed off the sand. Again. The second time, she slid upright until halfway, shifted to lying back, slowed herself, then sat up before reaching the bottom, controlling the fall on her own terms. Claire bit her lip against a rush of emotion. She'd never thought about falling safely as part of healing, but now she understood. Later, as the music faded and the park quieted, Daniel handed Claire a folded sheet of paper. A draft quiet zone checklist for families: warm water, soft cloth, pre-scouted shade, the 2 to 1G rounding game, and the final line, the right to stop belongs to the child. By midday, the safe corner tents began to fold away, but the small rituals stayed in the minds of those who came. Parents left with checklists tucked under their arms, children with the memory of shade chosen on purpose, and at least 1 new skill: how to fall and how to fly. When ready, Claire watched Lily lean against her, tired, but smiling. Can we practice safe falling again? Tomorrow? Claire kissed her hair. We can. But I think tomorrow you might want to try flying. The sun was dipping low when the last of the safe corner tents came down. Parents drifted away carrying checklists, warm water bottles, and quiet smiles. Claire Harper stood near the edge of the park, watching Lily and Caleb race toward the slide for 1 final run. The air felt lighter now, threaded with laughter instead of tension. Daniel Brooks approached, brushing sand from his jeans. You know, he said with a faint smile, I never thought this work would feel like home. Claire handed him a folder. Inside was a signed 2-year contract naming him head of psychological safety and communication training, complete with a dedicated budget for our safe and safe crying rollout. 1 condition, she said, we keep our promise, no using personal images for PR unless it directly serves the method's value. Daniel read the pages slowly, then looked up. Agreed. And 1 more thing. Credit the families. They've been teaching us as much as we've been teaching them. Done, Claire replied without hesitation. Across the grass, Lily had just landed in the sand, laughing. Caleb gave her a high five, their palms meeting with the ease of friends who had built something real together. It wasn't just a game, it was a small, unshakable symbol of trust. Claire glanced at Daniel. Looks like they're ready for whatever comes next. Daniel nodded, eyes following the children. That's the point. Safe enough to fall, safe enough to fly. They stood together in the fading light, knowing the work ahead was far from over, but so was the healing. True safety isn't built in grand gestures, it's created in consistent, respectful moments where trust is never taken for granted. Healing happens when people are seen for their worth, not used for their story. And the deepest change comes when we protect dignity as fiercely as we pursue progress. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts below. How can we create safe corners in our own lives? Leave a comment, like this video, and subscribe so you won't miss the next powerful story that reminds us what humanity looks like when it's at its best.